Venezuela's National Electoral Council has declared itself in permanent session in the lead up to the 2020 parliamentary elections. Health officials have warned that the true number of COVID-19 cases in the United States could be as high as 24 million. The Lebanese parliament has rejected the latest sanctions imposed by the US government against Syria. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. We begin in Venezuela, where the National Electoral Council declared itself in permanent session this Friday in the lead up to the 2020 parliamentary elections. The move was unanimously approved by the council members. Preparation will now begin for the legislative elections to elect a new National Assembly to be held in December. The new president of the Electoral Council, Indira Alonso Izagirre, ordered the organisation of every electoral body to guarantee the right to vote and preserve peace and stability in the country. And the Venezuelan government has denounced the government of Guyana for promoting a lawsuit in the International Court of Justice regarding the disputed territory of the Guyana Essequibo in a violation of the Geneva Agreement. This Friday, the Presidential Commission for the Defence of the Essequibo ratified the Geneva Agreement signed in 1966. It also reiterated the nullity of the arbitral award issued in 1899 in Paris, France, which illegally handed this territory to British Guyana. The Commission also reaffirmed Venezuela's position in defence of its territorial integrity and the Geneva Agreement as the only way to achieve a peaceful solution to the dispute. During the meeting, Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez assured that the claim forms part of the attacks on the country promoted by the United States.
Presenta entonces Guyana una demanda unilateral.
Guyana presented an unilateral demand that pretends to validate the arbitral award from 1899, where the imperial territory of Set is very obvious over our Guyana Essequibo land, one of the territorial offshoots that has more than a century old, the largest one that has ever known in the history of humanity. A curious thing, we made a call to Guyana people, because in 1899 Guyana wasn't a republic, and in those documents it's very obvious that Guyana was acting under imperial guidance, so it was an act to satisfy oil transnational interests.
Argentinian President Alberto Fernandez noted this Friday that in the last 20 days, the metropolitan region of Buenos Aires has seen a 147% increase in COVID-19 cases. The president expressed his concern and called for new measures, including the isolation of the Buenos Aires metropolitan area, home to 97% of the country's total confirmed coronavirus cases. Fernandez stressed that his government has the necessary capacity to break the chain of infection. He also expressed concern over a possible resurgence of the virus following the easing of measures prior to the reactivation of the economy.
That's why we're going to take several measures that will basically achieve two goals. The first is to preserve the life of citizens in the area. The decision implies a lockdown in the metropolitan area of Buenos Aires again. This way, movement will decrease drastically. By reducing movement, we are going to reduce infections. By reducing the number of cases, we are going to slow down the occupation of hospital beds. And while this occurs, we will be freeing up beds of people who are currently sick.
Mexico City's Public Security Secretary suffered a gun attack on Friday morning. Secretary Omar Garcia's vehicle was shot at on Paseo de la Reforma Avenue in the heart of Mexico City. The head of government of the capital, Claudia Sheinbaum, confirmed the attack on her Twitter account. She explained that it was carried out in the morning and reported that Garcia was receiving medical attention and was out of danger. The official also added that at least 3 people were killed in the incident and that the corresponding investigations are underway. And following the attack in Mexico City, President Manuel López Obrador expressed his full support to the victims.
We express our solidarity, our complete and total support to the head of government, to the members of the public security team of Mexico City. The preliminary report says that the head of public security is injured. They are dead. But if there are dead in this attack, it has to do with the work that is being done to ensure peace in Mexico City and in the country.
This Thursday, the Peruvian Congress approved a gender parity policy in election lists to be effective in the next presidential poll in 2021. The bill modifying the elections law was approved with 111 votes in favour, 15 against and 1 abstention. According to the new legislation, the running mates for the Peruvian presidency and vice presidency must include at least one woman, and 50% of the nominations for the primary elections must be women. The bill will also apply to parliamentary elections. Our correspondent in Havana, Laura Palmero, brings us a roundup of some of the latest news from the Caribbean region.
Thanks for the contact. Let's take a look at the most recent stories and news from the Caribbean countries. The Haitian Airways, Sunrise Airways, announced the resumption of flights between Santo Domingo and Port-au-Prince on July 3rd.
The airline will begin with 4 weekly trips, and they expect to increase the frequency in late July. Haitian authorities assure that they are protagonizing the protection of the passengers' health. They assured a number of precautionary measures, such as the disinfection of airplanes. Authorities also indicated that the onboard services is temporarily suspended in order to reduce contact between people and surfaces, while passengers with a body temperature higher than 38 degrees Celsius will not be able to board, and the use of masks is mandatory. In the Dominican Republic, 14 people have died from COVID-19 complications over the last 24 hours, bringing the death toll to 712 nationwide. While in the same period, 623 new positives were registered for a total of 29,764 infected since the first case of coronavirus was reported in the country on March 1st. The Ministry of Public Health said the active cases stand at 12,695, while 16,357 people have recovered from the disease. St. Vincent and the Grenadines has no non-active COVID-19 cases following the recovery of the last 2 cases. These recoveries were indicated by the positive results of RT-PCR tests conducted at the Molecular PCR Laboratory Unit of the Ministry of Health, Wellness and Environment and confirmed by the Caribbean Public Health Agency. St. Vincent and the Grenadines now has 29 recovered cases of COVID-19. The Ministry of Health highlighted the importance of maintaining the such as appropriate mask use, hand hygiene, cough etiquette, physical distancing at least 3 to 6 feet in public spaces, and strict adherence to quarantine and isolation. Also, Barbados government announces there are no active coronavirus cases left in Barbados. Last remaining 5 active cases have recovered. 35 days since the last local coronavirus transmission, the national tally remains 97.
Saharan dust from Africa is blanketing the United States southeast this Friday and will hang around through the weekend. Although the Sahara dust has moved away from the Caribbean countries, Cuban meteorologists expect to have no less strong overshadow in the Caribbean the next week.
The plume is easy to track on satellite imagery, where viewers can animate its journey to see the historic concentration of dust as a giant brown mass traversing the 5,000 miles. Forecast models show the highest concentrations of dust impacting Florida, Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi this Friday. The main impacts of the Saharan dust will be hazy skies during the day, locally reduced visibility, and degraded air quality.
And these are the news from Caribbean countries. Let's go back to you in the studio.
And we're taking a very short break now, so stay with us for more. Welcome back to From the South. In the United States, health officials have warned that the true number of COVID-19 cases in the country could be as high as 24 million, which is 10 times the number of officially confirmed cases so far. During a conference call with the press, the director for the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, Robert Redfield, said that this calculation was based on antibody tests on blood samples throughout the country. Redfield said he believes 5 to 8% of the population has been infected so far. Experts stress that the pandemic remains in its early stages and people need to continue to try to limit the spread of the virus. According to the latest data provided by Johns Hopkins University, the US has reported over 2.5 million confirmed COVID-19 cases and over 127,000 deaths. And this Thursday, the US House of Representatives passed a police reform bill presented by the Democratic majority. The bill passed with 236 votes in favour and 181 against. It comes in response to the widespread protests over the continued police killings of African Americans and systemic racism throughout the US. The reforms include a ban on chokeholds, the creation of a national database on police misconduct, and the elimination of legal protections that shield police officers from lawsuits. However, the bill is unlikely to make it through the Republican-led Senate and does not enjoy the support of President Donald Trump.
The nays are 181.
On the occasion of the 75th anniversary of the signing of the UN Charter, Secretary-General Antonio Guterres stressed that the organisation continues to be the key to resolving the problems of a world facing a pandemic, widespread discrimination, climate change, poverty, inequality and war.
The delegates in San Francisco in 1945, having themselves lived through a global pandemic, depression and war, seized their opportunity to plant the seeds of something better and new. Today, we must do the same. To achieve that watershed moment, we need to reimagine multilateralism, give it teeth to function as the founders intended, and ensure that effective global governance is a reality when it is needed.
A French artist has created a giant artwork titled World in Progress in the garden of the UN headquarters in Geneva as a gift from Switzerland for the 75th anniversary of the international organisation. The biodegradable glass fresco by artist Saipe depicts two children drawing a tree in an imaginary world in chalk, surrounded by a ring of men and women holding hands, together with different animals. The artist said he aimed to remind present generations of their duty to the future and to nature.
I'm super proud because it feels like we're painting on the world a little bit, I would say. Since the UN more or less represents the world, we have the feeling of being representative in a place that is highly symbolic for the whole world. Personally, I am firmly convinced that in the end it is together that humanity can respond to the various challenges it faces, and that, for me, the United Nations is more than a need, it is quite simply a necessity. I really think that perhaps it is a bit utopian, but as I see it, it is a place where we should sit around the table and discuss together the major issues that will confront humanity, or the times in which we are currently living.
The General Secretary of the Communist Party of Britain, Robert Griffith, stressed in an interview with China's Central Television that China has the right to pass any laws it chooses in its own territory and has shown great restraint in face of the unrest in the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region.
To pass whatever law it wishes to pass. Clearly, it would be preferable if a settlement of any outstanding difficulties in Hong Kong can be reached within Hong Kong. But if it's necessary, as it's a part of China's sovereign territory, if it's necessary for the central government to step in and take the necessary measures, then it has every right to do so. I think so far the Chinese government and the Hong Kong authorities have shown an enormous amount of restraint in the face of such violence and provocation in Hong Kong. I think that has been quite important in terms of what it says to the rest of the world, because as you know, there are governments and powerful forces in the media around the world who are always looking to portray the Chinese government and the Chinese party in the worst possible light.
This Friday saw the inauguration of the 36th Summit of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations in Hanoi, Vietnam. Vietnamese Prime Minister Nguyen Xuan Phuc presided the plenary of the summit, with member states participating via video conference in the wake of the novel coronavirus pandemic. During his speech, the Vietnamese PM called for continued cooperation in the fight against the pandemic and to consolidate the central role of the association in the region. ASEAN was founded in 1967 and is composed of Malaysia, Indonesia, Brunei, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Singapore, Thailand and the Philippines.
The COVID-19 epidemic has interrupted the discussion meetings on the development of the Code of Conduct on the South China Sea between ASEAN and China. In this context, Vietnam strives to work with ASEAN in cooperation with stakeholders to refrain from actions that complicate the situation at sea and to comply with international law. ASEAN wants an Asia-Pacific that is peaceful, stable, prosperous, and with cooperation for development. It doesn't want to take sides.
And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The Lebanese parliament has rejected the latest sanctions imposed by the US government against Syria. The sanctions in the form of the Caesar Syria Civilian Protection Act were condemned by the Speaker of the Lebanese Parliament, Nabih Berri, who argued that the measure seeks to prevent Syria from restoring its national unity, undermines the important role it plays in the West Asian region, and aggravates the country's economic and financial situation. He stressed that the application of this act now not only affects Syrians, but also their neighbours, namely Lebanon, Jordan and Iraq. The director of the UN World Food Programme in Syria warned on Friday of a spike in food prices across the country, while noting that over 3 million Syrians are facing food insecurity.
Food prices have never been as high as that over 9 years of conflict. And people tell us that they can't afford to buy food on the market. They have to wait to buy food on the market until prices go down. Imagine, they're not waiting to buy a television or sports shoes. They're waiting to buy food. Parents can't afford to feed their children anymore. They're cutting meals, they're selling all their assets, and they're giving them less to eat.
Heavy rainfall in the capital of Liberia, Monrovia, led to the death of 5 people, while several others were wounded after the outer wall of a local water treatment plant collapsed on several surrounding homes.
Drop on the horse too fell inside with it. Now I did black, someone laying on my back. I couldn't talk. I only knocking the zinc with my hand. Knocking the zinc with my hand. I did take it black on me. They brought me outside.
This is the preliminary where when incidences like this happen, you have to go find the facts. Then before you can have a plan of action. But we want to say to the family, those that lost their lives, we want to say we are very sorry.
The state funeral of former President Pierre Nkurunziza took place in Burundi on Friday. The ceremony was held in Burundi's capital city, Gitega, and was attended by newly sworn-in President Evariste Ndayishimiye. The former president passed away suddenly on June 8th from a heart attack. He was elected in August 2005 and served 15 years in office.
Nkurunziza was a shield that protected the honor and stability of the country. He was an example of a good leader who always looked where he was leading his country. In short, he was a close friend of Burundi.
To lose someone in such a short time, to lose someone you would still like to live with, is not easy. So I thank the family. I'm here to represent the family. I thank God for giving us the strength to hold until this moment.
The Special Representative of the UN Secretary General and head of the United Nations Peacekeeping Mission in South Sudan handed over a donation of fire trucks this Friday.
You're a little short on fire trucks at the moment, and we have been assisting you in the past, but I'm hoping that these 2 trucks, one's a proper fire engine that'll pump about 250 litres a minute, and the other is a tanker which holds 10,000 litres of water, which means that when you go somewhere and have a fire, there'll be enough water there to be able to put the fire out.
It has been quite a good time with the UNIMIS firefighters, because whenever there was fire outbreaks in Juba, we could request for assistance from the UNIMIS, and their response was promptly. Now that you have given us the truck, I think this time we are going to exert our effort in order to protect the people's lives and properties so that they live comfortably.
Madagascar is celebrating the 60th anniversary of its independence, but this year's main event has been scaled down due to the coronavirus pandemic. Only 200 people were allowed to attend the military parade, during which President André Rajoelina rode in an open-top Cadillac formerly owned by Madagascar's first president, Philibert Tsiranana. The island nation gained its independence from France on June 26, 1960. The country was among the first in Africa to fight against colonial rule in 1947, and its freedom came 13 years later.
Over the last 60 years, Madagascar has been in decline. Our hope, our wish, is that in the next 60 years we will progress so that our beloved homeland will reach new heights. Over the last 60 years, we have been trying to achieve real independence. We must now show solidarity in order to achieve that real independence, political, economic, and alimentary.
And we've come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Katrina Goss, and thank you for watching.